How does it happen? How can a group of people walk into a room together for the first time, pick up their instruments, and somehow end up controlling the emotions of entire continents? How does a song travel from a tiny rehearsal space in London to the lips of a farmer in Argentina, a student in Tokyo, a taxi driver in Mumbai, and a grandmother in Warsaw, all of them humming the same melody, all of them feeling the same inexplicable pull? Some artists sell millions of records. Some fill stadiums. Some win every award their industry has to offer. But very few, and I mean truly very few, manage to embed themselves into the cultural bloodstream of the entire planet. This is the story of how that happened. To understand how the world was conquered, you first need to understand what that world looked like before the conquest began. The late 1960s and early 1970s were a golden age for rock music. But that golden age had borders. British rock dominated Europe. The Rolling Stones, The Who, Led Zeppelin, they were giants on their own continent and had enormous reach in North America. American rock had its own kingdom. The Doors, Jimi Hendrix, Creedence Clearwater Revival, they owned the airwaves across the United States and Canada. But true global impact, the kind where a band is equally massive in London, Los Angeles, Sao Paulo, and Osaka at the same time, that was extremely rare. Music still traveled slowly. There was no internet. There was no streaming. The infrastructure for global superstardom existed in theory, but very few artists had actually used it. The Beatles came the closest. They showed the world that a rock band could transcend geography, language, and culture. But even the Beatles had broken up by 1970, leaving behind a roadmap that no one could quite follow. The world was waiting. It did not know it yet, but it was waiting for something that could cross every boundary, speak every emotional language, and make every listener on Earth feel as though the music had been written just for them. It was waiting for the impossible. And then, quietly, almost accidentally, the impossible walked into a London college and started rehearsing. Queen did not arrive on the rock scene like a bolt of lightning. They arrived like a strange puzzle that no one could quite figure out. From the very beginning, there was something about this band that did not fit neatly into any existing category. And that confusion, that beautiful, productive confusion, turned out to be their greatest weapon. Think about what they were doing. In an era when rock bands chose a lane and stuck with it, Queen refused to choose any lane at all. They blended opera with hard rock. They layered harmonies so dense and intricate that they sounded like cathedral choirs collapsing into guitar solos. They wrote songs that could make you headbang one moment and weep the next. They were theatrical, in a world that valued raw authenticity. They were technically flawless, in a genre that celebrated beautiful chaos. And then there were the four individuals, each one a world unto himself. Freddie Mercury was not simply a singer. He was a theatrical force. A man who seemed to have been born on a stage, who instinctively understood that music is not just sound, but spectacle, emotion, drama, vulnerability, and power all woven together. Brian May played guitar like no one before him. He had literally built his own instrument with his father from a fireplace, mantle, and spare parts, and from that handmade creation he drew sounds that resembled a full orchestra. His solos did not just complement the songs, they transformed them into something symphonic. He thought like a scientist and played like a poet. Roger Taylor brought explosive rhythmic energy and a vocal range that most lead singers would envy. His drumming drove the band forward like an engine, while his falsetto harmonies gave Queen's sound that layered, otherworldly quality that became their signature. And John Deacon, often the quietest member, was in many ways the band's secret anchor. His bass lines were melodic, warm, and incredibly groovy. He wrote some of Queen's most commercially successful songs, and his instinct for what made a song accessible to ordinary people, not just rock fans but everyone, was a gift the band relied on far more than most people realize. Four people, four completely different musical philosophies. And somehow, instead of pulling the band apart, those differences created a sound so wide, so varied, so emotionally rich that it could speak to nearly anyone on Earth. I think that is the part most people miss. Queen did not conquer the world in spite of their contradictions. They conquered it because of them. And this is where the story becomes truly remarkable. Most rock bands of the 1970s built their empires in the English-speaking world and treated everything else as a bonus. Queen did something radically different. They pursued the entire planet. They toured Japan early and passionately, arriving there in 1975 to a reception so hysterical it rivaled Beatlemania. Japanese fans connected with Queen's precision, their visual elegance, their emotional intensity. The band did not talk down to these audiences, they embraced them. Then came South America. Queen played in Argentina and Brazil in the early 1980s to audiences of staggering size. Enormous stadiums, 200,000 people at a single festival in Sao Paulo. In countries where rock music had been an import, a foreign curiosity, Queen became local heroes. Their music was universal. It did not need to be explained. The emotions were universal. The melodies were universal. The spectacle was universal. Queen also experimented relentlessly with genre. They made disco tracks. They made rockabilly. They made synthesizer-driven pop. They made thunderous arena rock. Every album was a reinvention. And every reinvention opened a door to a new audience. Funk fans found something to love. Classical music fans heard echoes of their own world. Punk fans, despite the ideological friction, could not deny the energy. But records alone do not conquer the world. Performance does. And Queen's live performances were something beyond concerts. They were communal experiences. They were rituals. Freddie Mercury did not simply sing to audiences. He conducted them. He turned 70,000 strangers into a single instrument. The call and response, the clapping, the collective singing. He would hold a note, and an entire stadium would hold its breath with him. He would stomp his foot, and the ground itself seemed to respond. It makes you think about what a concert really is at its highest level. It is not entertainment, it is communion. It is the closest thing secular culture has to a religious experience. Thousands of people breathing together, singing together, feeling the same emotion at the same moment. And Queen understood this better than almost anyone. Their stage production matched their musical ambition. Cinematic lighting, costumes that transformed Freddie into different characters throughout a single show. A sense of drama and narrative arc that made every concert feel like a story with a beginning, a climax, and an emotional resolution. You did not just watch a Queen concert, you lived through it. But the road was never smooth. It is important to say that. Critics attacked Queen regularly. They were accused of being flashy, too theatrical, too polished, too calculated. When punk rock exploded in the late 1970s, Queen was seen by some as everything wrong with rock music. Bloated, excessive, disconnected from street culture. Music journalists dismissed them time and again. Award bodies overlooked them. The critical establishment often treated them as a guilty pleasure rather than a serious artistic force. There were tensions within the band as well. Four strong creative personalities sharing a single vehicle were bound to clash. There were arguments about musical direction, songwriting credits, and the balance between commercial appeal and artistic integrity. The pressure of fame, the isolation of constant touring, the weight of being expected to surpass themselves with every album, all of it took its toll. Freddie Mercury carried additional burdens that the public did not fully understand until much later. Yet Queen kept going. They adapted. They evolved. When trends shifted, they shifted with them, not as followers, but as artists, absorbing new influences and filtering them through their own unmistakable identity. The Hot Space album confused many fans, but showed a band unafraid to risk alienation in pursuit of creative growth. The Works album proved they could master the polished sound of the 1980s without losing their soul. For Queen, reinvention was not a strategy. It was a survival instinct. And then the moment came when everything converged. All the years of genre crossing, boundary breaking, and audience building crystallized into 21 minutes that changed music history forever. July 13th, 1985. Live Aid. Wembley Stadium. London. A global television audience estimated at nearly 2 billion people. The biggest concert event the world had ever seen, organized to raise funds for famine relief in Ethiopia. Dozens of the world's greatest artists on a single stage across 2 continents, and Queen walked out and overshadowed every other act that day. It was not arrogance, it was mastery. Freddie Mercury, in a simple white tank top, walked onto that stage and within seconds had 72,000 people in the palm of his hand. The opening piano chords of Bohemian Rhapsody, the explosive transition into Radio Gaga, with the entire stadium clapping in perfect unison, a sea of hands moving together like a single organism, hammer to fall. Crazy Little Thing Called Love, We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions. Every song was magnificent. Every moment was electrifying. Every second was watched by nearly a quarter of the human population. I sometimes wonder what it must have felt like to be in that stadium. That performance at Live Aid did not just confirm Queen's global dominance. It defined it. It became the reference point, the standard against which every live performance in rock history would be measured. And decades later, it still holds up. It still gives you chills. So here we are, back to the question we started with. How did Queen conquer the world? You could answer it with numbers. More than 300 million albums sold, hit singles on every continent, sold-out concert tours across dozens of countries, a catalog of songs that remains among the most streamed and most licensed in all of popular music. But I do not think that is the real answer. I think Queen conquered the world because they made people feel seen. They made the outsiders feel like champions. They made the lonely feel like part of a chorus. They made the afraid feel brave. Their music did not just provide a soundtrack to people's lives. It gave people permission to live those lives more boldly, more loudly, more authentically. And Freddie Mercury, brilliant, flawed, fearless, vulnerable Freddie Mercury, became something more than a rock star. He became a symbol. A symbol that you can be different, that you can be contradictory, that you can contain multitudes within yourself, and that if you refuse to shrink, the world will eventually make room for you. Queen's music is still everywhere. It plays at sporting events, at weddings, and at funerals. Its soundtracks, movies, commercials, and protest marches. Children born decades after Freddie's passing in 1991 sing along to songs they discovered on their own, not because they were told to listen, but because the music found them. It always finds people. That is its nature. So yes, I think you have your answer by now. But what about you? What do you think about Queen? Are they overhyped, or did they truly define an era? For now, goodbye.